I'm Russ MacDonald, President for United Tribes Technical College, located here in Bismarck, North Dakota. I live here with my wife Francine and our two grandkids, Taylor and Isis. We moved here from the Spirit Lake Nation Reservation about nearly 3 years ago. Been working as the president since that time. It's been really coming together well, and I think one of the important pieces in regard to working in a post-secondary institution as a tribal college president is importance of partnering with other educational institutions like K through 12 systems or North Dakota University systems, systems outside of ourselves, where partnerships are important. And so one of the main things we've seen, I should probably back up a little bit. I was at University of North Dakota for a while as a researcher, and one of the things that we've seen in that work in regard to the literature and in regard to work that I did at Spirit Lake Nation as the planner, the director of planning for the tribe, was do a strategic planning effort, and so I became very familiar with the literature. And what we've seen, one of the results of the strategic planning effort at Spirit Lake said that from different groups of youth, elders, and adults, 3 different groups per district, and there's 4 districts on the Spirit Lake Reservation, so 12 focus groups. We aggregated the results from across the reservation, and the number one priority or theme that came out of that work was the importance of culture and language in regard to self-identity. So some of my research that was done is actually tied into what I think is happening, which I think is a good thing happening here with the state in regard to the essential understandings. And so for a couple different reasons. One is that there's some Native families who are not familiar with the culture, so that's important for them. But it's also important for the non-Native people to come to a better understanding of Native people. We're already exposed to majority society, so we've had to assimilate or adapt or interact with non-Natives, so we're exposed to that culture already. But a lot of times our non-Native relatives and friends don't know about the Native culture. But the more I look at this, the more I think about this, the more I think that as we move ahead here, is that if we're really going to get along, if we're going to really work together and collaborate and really recognize one another as human beings, then we have to come to a better knowledge of one another. And we recognize that we need to recognize that Norwegians and Germans are not the same as Native people, and we need the non-Natives to recognize that Dakotas and the Rickraws are not the same, and so we're all unique in whatever way, in our own cultures, in our language, in our dances, and our songs, and regardless of our ethnic background. And so those things are so important to the essential understandings piece. The other piece is not just the importance of the cultural piece, but also a history of what actually happened to the tribes here within North Dakota for this work. I mean, other things have happened to other tribes in other states, but I think this work should be focused on North Dakota and what happened here. And so we have treaties here in North Dakota between our tribes, and all of the tribes here within the state are treaty tribes. And so so we need to remember that in regard to what did these tribes trade in order for them to, with the federal government. Well, the majority of them traded land with the federal government in order to, within their treaties, and the government said, we will provide education for your children. We're going to provide your health care for you. We're going to take care of your welfare. And so if you look at all the treaties that have been formed throughout the United States, those are the 3 things that are kind of standard throughout all of them. And there's different provisions within some of them. Some of them have some more, some has less, but I think for the most part, those are the 3. And so I'm a former chairman for Spirit Lake Nation and provided testimony at the federal level in regard to that. And in one of my testimonies, I shared that I don't think our ancestors signed up for inadequate health care, inadequate education, and inadequate welfare. And so we need the U.S. government to provide those services to at the level that is equitable to what's provided to all other Americans. And if they're doing that effectively or efficiently and sufficiently, then I think what happens is it allows our tribes to have the resources needed in order to create safe communities and to have healthy environments and to grow their families. And if we continue to be funded in inadequate levels, then what happens? We continue the poverty that's going on there right now. And so prior to first contact, we weren't in those situations. We were self-sufficient, we were independent. And so the federal initiatives, the federal assimilation practices created dependent people upon the federal government. And now we're trying to reverse that. The federal government wants to reverse that. I believe we want to reverse that. So as we move ahead, we need to take control of what's happening with our communities and move ahead. And so as we move ahead, I believe the answers for moving ahead and being independent lie within our culture and our language. Those two have to be provided there. But in regard to this change in the world and evolving societies, we also have to be knowledgeable in the majority of society and how they conduct themselves in regard to their culture, in regard to their societies, if we're going to compete at the level that's needed in order to create economic development engines, to create job opportunities within our communities, to continue to educate. And those things are all important in regard to moving ahead and creating this foundation and providing those services that are necessary for our communities to continue to thrive, or if they're not thriving, then to get them going in that direction. So those things are all important in regard to that. So education is important for that, but underlying that is that foundation for culture and language, which will help us address self-identity and help create more successful students at the individual level, which I would hope at the whole would come together in some kind of congregate format that would affect whole societies. And so we need to do that at the individual level. We pass that down to our children. Our children become good people, good community members. They're already that. I think for the most part they're open. I think they're kind of open slates in regard to how we want to form them. They're clay that we mold as parents. And so we have to be healthy ourselves in order to create these healthy individuals, and how we do that is through our culture and language. And then the education only enhances what we already know in regard to our culture and language, and we move ahead. And if we can do that at the family level, then when we bring all of our communities together, then our communities become healthy. And beyond that, I don't know. I think that's as far as I've thought, but I think that's enough for this lifetime and for maybe another lifetime for somebody else. But we move that ahead. And if we really invest within those children and that youth in regard to the culture, language, and education, then they're going to have all the tools they need in order to keep us moving ahead and to survive within this ever-changing world.